For most of country music's history, the spotlight belonged to solo artists. One voice, one name, one story. But between the 1960s and the 1980s, something shifted. Bands started showing up with a sound so big and so tight that radio had no choice but to clear the way. Some came from bars nobody had heard of. Some came from churches. One came from a gas station sign. And every single one of them walked into country music and left it different from how they found it. These are the 10 greatest groups that took over country music, and the hits that proved they belong there. Number 10. Flatt and Scruggs, The Ballad of Jed Clampett, 1962. Lester Flatt and Earl Scruggs left Bill Monroe's Bluegrass Boys in 1948 and formed the Foggy Mountain Boys. Flatt's warm baritone and fluid guitar runs anchoring Scruggs' three-finger banjo style, a technique so original it now simply bears his name. Nashville knew what they were and tried to keep them out anyway. Bill Monroe worked against them behind the scenes for years, and the Grand Ole Opry refused them a broadcast slot until Martha White Foods threatened to pull its entire advertising sponsorship from WSM Radio unless they were given one. A flour company is what finally got them on the air. In September 1962, the producer of the Beverly Hillbillies needed a theme song and reached out. Louise Scruggs, Earl's wife and their manager, recognized mid-session that the theme had enough commercial energy to release as a standalone single and pushed to do exactly that. The Ballad of Jed Clampett became the only bluegrass recording in history to reach #1 on the Billboard Country chart, hitting the top spot in January 1963. The show aired in 76 countries. Scruggs later said they received mail from around the world from people who had never heard a banjo before and wanted to know what the instrument was called. Their 1949 instrumental, Foggy Mountain Breakdown, was used as the chase theme in the 1967 film Bonnie and Clyde, giving their music a second life with an entirely new generation. A New York Times critic once compared Scruggs' technique to the violin virtuosity of Niccolò Paganini. They broke up in 1969 when Scruggs wanted to move toward rock and folk audiences, and Flatt refused. Neither ever came close to matching what they had built together. They were inducted into the Country Music Hall of Fame in 1985. Number 9, Buck Owens and the Buckaroos, I've Got a Tiger by the Tail, 1965. Buck Owens was sitting with songwriter Harlan Howard one afternoon when the session was going slowly and neither had much to show for it. Then Owens drove past an Esso gas station and saw the advertising slogan on the sign, "Put a tiger in your tank." He had the song mapped out before he got home. He recorded it with the Buckaroos in December 1964, Don Rich on guitar and fiddle, Tom Brumley on pedal steel, Doyle Holly on bass, Willie Cantu on drums, and it became his 6th consecutive #1 in February 1965, spending 5 weeks at the top and crossing over to number 25 on the Billboard Hot 100. It was inducted into the Grammy Hall of Fame in 1999. The Buckaroos were not a backing band in the ordinary sense. Their sound, twin Fender Telecasters, driving rhythm, no strings, no orchestration, was a direct statement against everything Nashville was doing at the time. Owens called it freight train music. Nashville called it the Bakersfield sound. Between 1963 and 1967, Owens and the Buckaroos had 15 consecutive #1 singles, a record that stood for decades. The Beatles covered Act Naturally in 1965 with Ringo Starr on lead vocals, which says everything about the reach of what they had built from a California honky-tonk scene that Nashville had never taken seriously. When guitarist Don Rich was killed in a motorcycle accident in July 1974, Owens said his music life effectively ended that day. He reunited with Dwight Yoakam for Streets of Bakersfield in 1988, which gave him his first #1 since 1972. He performed every weekend at his Crystal Palace venue in Bakersfield until the night before he died in March 2006. CMT ranked the Buckaroos #2 in their list of the 20 greatest bands in country music history. Number 8, Nitty Gritty Dirt Band, Mr. Bojangles / Fishin' in the Dark, 1966 to 1987.
Dance for you.
Jeff Hanna and Jimmy Fadden started the Nitty Gritty Dirt Band in Long Beach, California in 1966, playing folk and jug band music while still in high school. Jackson Browne was briefly a member before leaving for a solo career. By 1971, their cover of Jerry Jeff Walker's Mr. Bojangles reached #9 on the Billboard Hot 100, introducing the song to a national audience and establishing the band as something other than a novelty act. In 1972, they recorded Will the Circle Be Unbroken, a landmark triple album that brought them into sessions with Mother Maybelle Carter, Earl Scruggs, Roy Acuff, Doc Watson, and Merle Travis. Long-haired California musicians recording alongside the foundational figures of country and bluegrass in Nashville was exactly as unlikely as it sounds and exactly as powerful. The album is still considered one of the most important documents in American roots music. In 1977, they became the first American band to tour the Soviet Union, performing 28 sold-out shows. Their country commercial peak came in the 1980s when they returned to the format full-time. Long Hard Road, Modern Day Romance, and Fishin' in the Dark all reached #1 on the country chart. Fishin' in the Dark eventually certified platinum as a digital download decades after its 1987 release. The band has operated continuously since 1966 across more than 20 studio albums and multiple Grammy Awards. In 2024, they announced a farewell tour marking nearly 60 years of performing. That is not a career. That is an institution. Number 7, the Charlie Daniels Band, The Devil Went Down to Georgia, 1979.
The devil went down to Georgia. He was looking for a soul steal.
Charlie Daniels had been a Nashville session musician since the 1950s, playing on recordings by Bob Dylan, Leonard Cohen, and Ringo Starr before forming his own band in the early 1970s. By 1979, he and his bandmates were preparing their 10th studio album, Million Mile Reflections, named because the band had literally logged 1 million miles on the road when they realized they had no fiddle song. Daniels went to a rehearsal studio with one idea: The Devil Went Down to Georgia. The band built the entire song in a single session.
Sounded something like this.
The Devil Went Down to Georgia was written collaboratively by Daniels and all 5 bandmates: Tom Crane, Joel DiGregorio, Fred Edwards, Charles Hayward, and Jim Marshall. It reached #1 on the Billboard Hot Country Songs chart on August 25, 1979, crossed over to #3 on the Billboard Hot 100, won the Grammy for Best Country Performance by a Duo or Group with Vocal, and was named the CMA Single of the Year for 1979. It then appeared on the Urban Cowboy soundtrack in 1980, and in 1996, Olympic gymnast Dominique Moceanu performed her floor routine to it at the Atlanta Games in front of tens of millions of viewers, which is what happens to a record that stops being a hit and becomes a national landmark.
I bet you're gonna regret, because I'm the best there's ever been.
Daniels was inducted into the Grand Ole Opry in 2008 and the Country Music Hall of Fame in 2016. Between 1973 and 1982, the band placed 8 singles on the Billboard Hot 100. He died on July 6, 2020. The fiddle battle at the center of his most famous song, The Boy Who Tells the Devil He Is the Best There Has Ever Been and Then Proves It, remains one of the great story songs in American music. Number 6, the Statler Brothers, Flowers on the Wall, 1965.
I keep hearing you're concerned about my happiness.
Harold Reed, Don Reed, Phil Balsley, and Lou DeWitt were 4 friends from Staunton, Virginia, who had been singing together since their teenage years before meeting Johnny Cash in 1963 and joining his touring roadshow. They took their name from a box of Statler brand tissues spotted during a rehearsal. DeWitt wrote "Flowers on the Wall" in 1965, drawing on his experience working at a psychiatric hospital in Virginia. The flowers stenciled above every window, Captain Kangaroo on the television at the end of the overnight shift, the patients playing solitaire with whatever cards were left. The man in the song insists he is fine. He plays cards with a deck of 51, one card short, which he either never notices or refuses to acknowledge, and will not admit that anything in his life has gone wrong. That detail is the whole song in 6 words.
You and your friends are worried about me. I'm having lots of...
The song reached number 2 on the Billboard Hot 100 and number 4 on the country chart, crossing over in a way nobody expected from a group still known primarily as Johnny Cash's opening act. It won the Grammy for Best Contemporary Vocal Performance by a Group in 1966. Kurt Vonnegut quoted the complete lyrics in his 1981 book Palm Sunday and called it a great contemporary poem. Quentin Tarantino used it in Pulp Fiction in 1994, with an irony so precise it felt like it had always been meant for that scene.
Playing solitaire till dawn.
The Statler Brothers won the CMA Vocal Group of the Year award 10 consecutive years from 1972 to 1981, a record that has never been equaled. Lou DeWitt, who wrote the song that made them famous, suffered from Crohn's disease throughout his career and was forced to leave the group in 1982. He died on August 15, 1990, at 52. The song about a man quietly falling apart, written by a man quietly fighting an illness, has never let go of anyone who has heard it.
51, smoking cigarettes and...
5 groups left, and these are the ones that didn't just chart. They permanently changed what country music looked like. Before we get there, if you have not subscribed yet, hit that button now and turn on the bell. This channel drops classic country history every week, and the algorithm will not tell you about it unless you do. 5 left. Let's finish this. Number 5, Exile, Woke Up in Love, 1983. Exile started in Richmond, Kentucky in 1963 as a teenage cover band and spent 15 years going nowhere before Kiss You All Over reached number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100 in 1978 and stayed there for 4 weeks. Then the follow-up singles failed. Lead singer Jimmy Stockley left in 1980 and died 5 years later, and the band had no momentum and no direction. What they decided was to go country, and it turned out to be the best decision any of them ever made. J.P. Pennington had already written songs that Alabama had taken to number 1. The Closer You Get and Take Me Down. And the connection gave the reconfigured band credibility in Nashville. They signed with Epic Records in 1983, teamed with producer Buddy Killen, and Woke Up in Love reached number 1 in March 1984. Between 1983 and 1987, Exile placed 10 number 1 singles in an 11-single span on the country chart, one of the most complete reinventions in the history of the format. The band wrote their own songs and played every instrument themselves, which was rare for a country act in that era. They performed on the Grand Ole Opry stage more than 100 times. For years, they avoided playing Kiss You All Over at the Opry, uncertain the crowd would accept it. When they finally performed it at the Ryman Auditorium, the audience danced in the aisles. A pop band with one giant hit and a broken lineup that went country and dominated the chart for 4 years. That is one of the better comeback stories the format ever produced. Number 4, The Oak Ridge Boys, Elvira, 1981. The Oak Ridge Boys trace their origins to 1943 in Knoxville, Tennessee, where a group called Wally Fowler and the Georgia Clodhoppers performed so often for workers and families at the Oak Ridge National Laboratory that they eventually renamed themselves the Oak Ridge Quartet and shifted entirely to Southern gospel music. By the time Dwayne Allen, Joe Bonsall, Richard Sturban, and William Golden were all in place in the early 1970s, they were one of the most respected gospel acts in America. Sturban had previously sung bass with the Stamps Quartet, Elvis Presley's backup vocal group, which gives some sense of the tradition these voices were carrying. The transition to country music cost them gospel bookings, lost them fans, and forced them to rebuild their audience from scratch. Elvira had been written by Dallas Frazier in 1965, inspired by a street name in East Nashville, and had been recorded several times without becoming more than a minor chart entry. Dwayne Allen first heard it on Nashville radio in 1966 and never forgot it. When producer Ron Chancey recommended it 15 years later, Allen recognized it immediately. Chancey had one additional idea. He asked Richard Sturban to drop into the low bass register for the hook, the giddy-up Papa mo mau, that became one of the most recognizable sounds in country music history. They debuted it live at a Tonight Show soundcheck, and before they were halfway through, everyone in the building who could hear them had come running. The record reached #1 on the country chart, crossed over to #5 on the Billboard Hot 100, won the Grammy for Best Country Performance by a duo or group with vocal in 1982, and was certified double platinum, a milestone shared at that time only with Kenny Rogers and Dolly Parton's Islands in the Stream. Between 1977 and 1989, the Oak Ridge Boys placed 30 singles on the country chart, 17 in the top 10. They were inducted into the Country Music Hall of Fame in 2015, a gospel quartet that spent 30 years earning one sound, then used it to make something nobody had heard before. Number 3. The Judds, Mama He's Crazy, 1984.
Mama, I found someone.
In the early 1980s, Naomi Judd was a single mother, working as an ICU nurse in Franklin, Tennessee, making demo tapes with her daughter Winona on a cheap cassette recorder, and occasionally appearing on local Nashville television. One of her hospital patients turned out to be the daughter of record producer Brent Maher. Before the woman was discharged, Naomi slipped her a cassette tape of her and Winona singing. Maher listened to it and was stopped cold by Winona's voice. He arranged an audition with RCA Records executives. The Judds were signed on the spot. Winona later said that in 1983, her mother was floating checks to pay the rent. 2 years later, they were headlining the Astrodome. Mama He's Crazy was written by Kenny Odell after watching a soap opera storyline about a young woman describing her unpredictable boyfriend to her skeptical mother. Naomi heard it at a publishing company and chose it immediately, recognizing the mother-daughter dynamic at its center. It reached #1 on the country chart on August 4, 1984, the first #1 for a female duo in more than 30 years, and won the Grammy for Best Country Performance by a duo or group with vocal the following year. It was the first of 14 consecutive #1 singles the Judds placed on the country chart between 1984 and 1991.
Mama, he's crazy.
Between those years, they won 5 Grammy Awards, 9 CMA Awards, and 7 ACM Awards, and were named CMA Vocal Group of the Year every single year from 1985 to 1991, a record that still stands. They disbanded in 1991 when Naomi was diagnosed with hepatitis C. Naomi died by suicide on April 30, 2022, the day before she and Winona were to be inducted into the Country Music Hall of Fame. Ashley Judd accepted the honor on their behalf the following evening. A cassette tape passed across a hospital room started everything. Country music has never had a more unlikely origin story for a run that dominant. Number 2. Restless Heart, I'll Still Be Loving You, 1987.
Changing my life with your...
Record producer Tim Dubois assembled Restless Heart in Nashville in 1984 as a pure studio project. 5 session musicians brought together to demo songs he had written, cut the recordings, and go their separate ways. The original lead singer was replaced before any material was officially recorded with Larry Stewart, a demo vocalist that keyboardist Dave Innes knew from Belmont College. Dubois had not planned for the group to become a performing act at all. The sessions went well enough that everyone decided to stay. They chose the name Restless Heart, signed with RCA Nashville, and built something nobody had designed from the outside.
Feel all the mountains of
Their real commercial breakthrough came with their second album, Wheels, in 1987. 4 consecutive #1 country hits, including I'll Still Be Loving You, which crossed over to number 33 on the Billboard Hot 100. That run extended to 6 consecutive #1s, with their third album, Big Dreams in a Small Town. By the end of the decade, they had placed 26 singles on the country chart, with 6 at #1, 4 consecutive albums certified gold, and an ACM award for Vocal Group of the Year. Critics consistently compared their tight harmonies and country rock arrangements to the Eagles, which was accurate and also not quite sufficient.
till time stands still.
One of their early songs had been rejected from Wheels specifically because it sounded too similar to Exile, which says something about the Nashville landscape of the mid-1980s, where 2 bands could be competing so directly in sound that a song was deemed too close to distinguish. The demo project that was never supposed to become a band became one of the most commercially successful country groups of the decade. That is the quietest origin story on this list, and one of the more remarkable.
Every ocean is dry.
#1 Alabama, Mountain Music, 1982.
Oh, play me some mountain music.
Randy Owens and Teddy Gentry grew up on neighboring cotton farms on Lookout Mountain in northeastern Alabama, cousins raised within walking distance of each other, learning guitar and singing gospel in church before they were 6 years old. Jeff Cook, another cousin, joined them in the late 1960s, and they began performing under various names through the club circuit across the Southeast. For years, they played 6 nights a week at a bar in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, called the Bowery, building a following one room at a time while every major label in Nashville passed on them repeatedly. They changed their name to Alabama in 1977. In 1980, an RCA executive named Joe Galante saw them at a radio seminar showcase on the same bill that introduced Reba McEntire and signed them before the week was out. Tennessee River was their first RCA single and their first #1. It was also the first of 21 consecutive #1s, a streak that stretched from 1980 through 1987 and has never been equaled in country music history. Mountain Music reached #1 in 1982 and became the title of their third RCA album, speaking directly to a working-class Southern audience that country radio had been gradually losing. Dixieland Delight, If You're Gonna Play in Texas, Song of the South, Feels So Right. The hits came so consistently that country radio essentially belonged to them for a full decade. The Academy of Country Music named them Artist of the Decade for the 1980s. They won CMA Entertainer of the Year 3 consecutive years in 1982, 1983, and 1984, something no band had ever done. Alabama sold more than 80 million albums and charted 43 #1 singles across 3 decades. They are the most commercially successful band in country music history by every available measure. But what they also proved, and the proof was needed, was that a self-contained band playing their own instruments and writing their own songs could dominate a format built entirely around solo artists. Every major country group that followed them through the 1980s and 1990s owes a direct debt to 3 cousins from Lookout Mountain who spent years in a Myrtle Beach bar before Nashville returned their calls. They were inducted into the Country Music Hall of Fame in 2005.